Good things take time. Learning new skills requires work, and sometimes we overlook that and we shoot for the moon with nothing more than a BB gun. We often go into the process of learning a new skill with exponential optimism and usually end up landing somewhere below perfection when it's all said and done. More or less, there is a predictable path that learning new skills or innovating a new field of technology takes us. That's why today I'll be using the epic musical journey of Gene Belcher from Bob's Burgers to demonstrate this path and how it relates to the Gartner Hype Cycle. But because I think it would also be beneficial for the conversation, I'd also like to quickly touch on the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you've never heard of this effect, then allow me to briefly explain. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger conducted a small study where participants were instructed to take a quiz and self-assess how they did on it. The results of the study showed that individuals who were objectively less competent on a given topic usually assessed their performance as being higher than what it really was, while individuals with a competence level over a certain threshold assessed their performance as lower than what it really was. The original study's graph of results looks like this, pretty simple and straightforward, but something to note is that the results from this study never showed individuals with a lower competence level perceiving themselves as all-knowing or perfect. So that's the graph from the 1999 study. But the commonly memed graph that is usually associated with the phenomenon looks like this. The bones of this graph are derived from the Gartner Hype Cycle, a graphical presentation used to show the maturation of new technologies over time. It's often shown with 5 individual parts, namely, the trigger, an event or new technology that starts the interest for growth, the peak of inflated expectations, where the believed potential of the new technology or skill is thought to be exponentially vast. Think of how flying cars and hoverboards were viewed in the 20th century and how those grand ideas never fully materialized. That's where the trough of disillusionment comes in, the point at which you start to gain more knowledge or understanding on the given topic, but also start realizing how far you truly are from the level of skill or innovation previously thought possible. Next comes the slope of enlightenment, where the true work, studying, and commitment is done to become skilled or innovative, also where much of the progress is made to better new skills or technology. And lastly, the plateau of sustainability, where you get to a level of skill or innovation that allows you to create a valuable product, whether it be a functioning Lexus hoverboard or, in our case, music. I feel the Gartner Hype Cycle and the Dunning-Kruger effect combined make for a really good tool to explain the emotions and thought process behind the journey of learning and implementing music theory. Now, with all the dense material out of the way, let's get into it. We're first introduced to Gene Belcher and his infatuation with sound and music in the very first episode of Season 1, Human Flesh. Here, we see him with his fart megaphone, a staple of his in the earlier seasons. It's not until Episode 2 that we see him with traditional music instruments, namely his iconic blue keyboard. We also see that Gene has a ukulele and some percussion mallets in his apartment, so he's at least wanted to play multiple instruments since Season 1. It's safe to say that Gene has already had the event that would act as his initial trigger for his journey into music. So instead of starting here, we're likely somewhere ascending this slope at the start of the show. His musical talent isn't quite seen yet, as he only plays pre-recorded sound bites on his keyboard, including fart noises, drum loops, and his grandparents having sex.
Ow! Ow! Ow!
What?
Ow!
Principal's office now!
Ow! Ow! Ow!
Right.
However, we see through moments like Gene's tambourine playing, triangle, and movie score pitches of Season 1 that Gene has a lot of confidence and pride in what he's doing. But the actual product isn't really musically advanced, often only playing straight 8th and 16th notes or a slight variation with 8th notes and quarter note rests. Relatively simple musical concepts and rhythms that could be taught to a complete beginner. But just 2 episodes after pitching a movie score for the filmmaker in the episode Sacred Cow, Gene is scoring for his mom's dinner theater performance, seemingly all by himself. He plays chords in the key of F natural minor and borrows chords from the F harmonic minor, and also plays a standard minor 2-5-1 progression.
The murderer was me! Ha ha!
Which shows he has at least some beginner knowledge of music theory. I will say that his chord selection for the score ties in really well to the emotions and ideas that are supposed to be felt in the moment. But episodes like this became one of the earlier problems I ran into doing research for this video. You see, the writers were likely still fleshing out Gene and his abilities in the earlier seasons. He's literally playing the melody of Linda's speech by ear in some parts of the score. playing by ear is something that I'd say takes a fair bit of skill and musical aptitude. At this point in the show, I think it hadn't been fully pinned down as to what Jean's character development journey would be. Tina's was pretty evident and easy to follow, as it's the journey of adolescence. Louise's journey was a little less fleshed out, but in my opinion, it seems to be the journey that a small child might go through in learning that they are not the center of the universe and must treat people with kindness, respect, and show empathy. But Jean was much more of a non-serious comic relief character, who's supposed to be elastic and moldable for the jokes, so the writers weren't always keeping him on a linear path of anything for a while, including musical growth. So although few and far between, there are some moments of what could be considered as higher musical ability than the rest of the season would suggest he has. But averaging Jean's ability in the first season, overall I'd say Jean lands right about here on the chart. He's very confident in what he's doing and has the ability to play very beginner pieces like Yankee Doodle, but the skill level can be looked at as relatively low. This is the case for seasons 1 through part of season 3, but we don't see Jean at the very peak of inflated expectations until season 3, episode 8, The Unbearable Likeness of Jean. Here we see Jean create a very short jingle using pre-recorded music on his keyboard.
Have a feast for your face. Have a burger at Bald Bob's.
It was pretty good up until you said Bald Bob.
He's learned about alliteration and jingle writing and has created some simple melodies. But the actual premise of making a catchy jingle doesn't really come across. I will say it does catch your attention on how odd it would be to hear some of these jingles for the first time, so maybe he's ahead of the jingle writing curve via shock factor. He then debuts a song called Silent Love at his soon-to-be ex-girlfriend Courtney's birthday party.
When I close my eyes and I cover my ears, it's almost like you aren't here. It's a silent love. Shh.
He's cut off before he can finish the entire song, but from the snippet that he does sing, we get an idea of what Jean is able to create in a song format. The music is written in D major and has a pretty simple melody with all notes being of the key. It's very jingly, so I'd say he accomplished that. He also starts the second section of Silent Love using the 6th chord and the 2 chord of the key, changing the feel of the song from major to minor. So I'd also say that required some skill as well. However, Jean spent a lot of time with Courtney's father creating music in this episode, so I can't be sure how much credit is owed to Jean and how much is owed to Courtney's father in creating the jingly melody or the chord progression. After all, he did just hit a button and everything started playing. I don't want to take anything from Jean, but it is part of the episode that Courtney's father is a singer/songwriter and almost musical mentor for Jean, so it wouldn't be far-fetched for him to create the music for him as well, which is no different than a producer creating beats for a recording artist. I see Jean's contribution in this episode being the lyrics more than anything else. Jean's vocal melody and lyrical concept for Silent Love ends up getting stolen by Courtney's dad for a muffler commercial at the end of the show, so it must have been good enough to be bought by a company. Sucks for Jean, but that's show business. So at this point, we see a very confident Jean, who sees no issues with his musical abilities or lack thereof. He's introduced to a bunch of musical resources and starts to literally daydream about the perceived limitless potential that he now has with this newfound access. It still hasn't occurred to him the true amount of work needed to actually master the use of all this new gear. Next up is the episode and song Topsy. Here's where I'd start to put Jean on the decline of the mountain. This episode is the first moment when Jean starts to notice that he isn't proficient in all things music. He points out that he's in a creative rut, and when he tries to sing a duet that he wrote, he's shocked that he sounds no better than his perpetually monotone sister Tina.
They'll say autopsy at my— oh my god, I can't sing either! What are we gonna do?
Before this, Jean's confidence and attitude told me he was oblivious to his musical skill and saw himself as being more talented than he actually was. Now, the song Topsy is amazing, point blank period. It's the type of song and dance that could bring grown men to their knees and tears to the eyes of thousands. But it's another one of those songs in the series where it throws the timeline off. Earlier in the episode, Jean was playing alien fart noises on his keyboard, and a couple days later, he's written a duet with a 7-piece orchestra and a choir. What I've noticed when there are really well-written songs by Jean, they're often played by other characters. Someone else on the piano, other students on the brass and wind instruments, someone else singing, etc., etc. In the song Topsy, he doesn't sing or play a single instrument aside from the keyboard when he was first writing the song in the restaurant, which was when the music for the song was much simpler. In situations like this, where there is a wealth of musical knowledge coming from his peers and adults, I find it hard to give Gene the sole credit, or even the majority of the credit, when he's not directly seen playing or creating the music. Gene acts in the position of producer and creative director in a lot of episodes, whether it's creating girl groups, making Die Hard the musical, or putting together a band. So in this situation, as much as it hurts me to say it, I think Gene was much more of a creative director than anything else. I believe the same thing applies for Die Hard the musical in the episode Work Hard or Die Trying Girl. While I do believe Gene's lack of musical skills shows in these episodes, what usually shines through is his immense creativity. He doesn't really ever have anything stopping him from creating the most outlandish ideas, as he's not tied down by any idea of what true musical excellence is yet. So without the idea of holding himself to a Michael Jackson or an Elton John, he's more than happy to make things like a song with alien fart noises or a Die Hard musical. That is until the episode Itty Bitty Ditty Committee, where Gene takes a long tumble into the trough of disillusionment when he gets to directly compare himself to his musical peers. It all starts when Peter Pescadero and regular-sized Rudy run into the Belcher kids playing music in front of their restaurant. Gene has a vision of being a successful band known as the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee, and he partners up with these two plus his sisters and starts practicing. The first song is some of the worst music Gene has ever been a part of, being all over the place in every way. Another common theme comes up when Gene is asked to sing more, and he has to explain that most people don't really like the sound of him singing. Gene's vocal performance is by far one of his worst musical skills in the series. But up until these recent episodes, he hadn't noticed how poor his skills really were, so the band recruits Daryl as the lead singer. Now Daryl becomes very serious about the band, scheduling practices every day after school, something Gene is not too keen on doing. The real rude awakening for Gene happens when Daryl asks Gene to change the key of the song he wrote so that it could be sung better. Gene points out that not only does he not know how to change the key of the song, but he only knows the one key, and he's not sure what the letters of the notes in that key are. This doesn't line up too well if we look back to the song Silent Love or his score of Dinner Theater, because those are both in different keys than the key of G he's been playing in. However, we could assume that Gene has been playing by ear and finding notes that go together to make the chords, or just knows the chord shapes. I don't know, either way, seems like a stretch, and it's much easier to just say that the writers weren't keeping continuity at the beginning of the series. So Peter Pescadero then plays the key that Daryl requested, and the song instantly becomes better as a whole. Gene shows a look of worry on his face and later expresses how he felt weird about the whole situation. The next day, Gene finds out that Peter, Rudy, and Daryl have kicked all the Belchers out of the band and made new songs. Daryl even brings a looper pedal to do keyboard and vocals at the same time. Rudy and Daryl point out to Gene that they had to kick him out the band because he doesn't know enough about music to play with them. It's also revealed that apparently Gene only knows 3 chords. So Gene, filled with the rage of an emotionally distraught child, vows to become the greatest musician to walk this earth, all within a 48-hour period so he can play the band's next gig. Here, we're still seeing the lofty expectations that we'd imagine to see at the previous peak, but this feels much more like a situation of denial based on being kicked out of the band and not purely inflated expectations. Gene recruits the music teacher, Miss Merkins, to teach him. She lets him know that he has to do these things called working, learning, and practicing to get good at music. Gene practices a scale for 45 seconds and realizes that it's going to take a lot of time, but more importantly, a lot of work to become a skilled musician. Gene instantly becomes discouraged and sees all of his dreams of being big in music completely washed away. He quits music and gives his sisters his keyboard, his most prized possession, the thing that has defined him for so many years, and he tells them to burn it. Eventually, his sisters convince him that he should still do music, even if it's not instantly the greatest, and they get him to play again. This episode showed the mental side of learning a new skill and what it can do to your confidence overall. Gene has never been this low and unsure of himself in the past. He's never made these comparisons or noticed his lack of musical knowledge and skill. He's always just been blissfully unaware, leading to his high confidence but low ability. So we've hit our low point. Gene shows some improvement from here on, like in the episode Diarrhea of a Poopy Kid, where Gene creates a song completely by himself in the bathroom.
Turkey, I need you beside me. I need all of you. I need your breast and thigh meat. And what's that hiding in your hole? Some stuffing for my heart and soul. I could still be a winner when I eat Dad's Thanksgiving dinner.
That was beautiful, Gene.
Thank you, Father.
It's nothing outstanding, but it is a lot of progress from his time with the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee. But we didn't get much progress after that for some time. However, what I'd say is just as important is the amount of time Gene starts to put into finding his musical taste. From the beginning of the show, Gene has been shown to have a unique and eccentric taste in music. But episodes following the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee have largely been used to sculpt that idea more. Episodes like What About Blob, where Gene feels like he relates well to a blob of bioluminescent algae, because on the outside they are both blobs that no one understands, the misunderstanding being musically for Gene, and for the algae it's their place in the marina. Or Gene's infatuation with the Christmas album called Percy McTintlebud's Tinsel Machine, an album that is so unliked that it's impossible to find another copy when Gene breaks his. This arc, at the time of me writing the script, comes to a boil when Gene reluctantly sings pop song vocals for his ex-girlfriend turned friend, Courtney. He is completely repulsed by the auto-tune and mainstream aspect of the entire song and video. Gene values individuality and uniqueness over popularity in music. So while I do think Gene wants to be popular and successful in music, he doesn't want to get there by being on trend. I point this out to say, it is possible that part of Gene's slow progress is the aversion to playing like everyone else. Something that is more common in music and arts in general than you may think. Individuality is extremely important, but I would never deny the benefits of learning the foundation of any art form. And when it comes to learning the theory behind Western music, it's less of a loss of individuality and more about creating a tool set that can help you better express your unique ideas. I'd categorize all these events, the Thanksgiving song, the Blob moment, Courtney's pop song, as being part of the slope of enlightenment, as I feel they all go into aspects of building the skills Gene needs and the character of music Gene would like to create. So if you've been following along, you know the next step would likely be the plateau of sustainability. But because the show is not finished and Gene's journey is not over, I believe that space should be saved for a later date, as I see Gene possibly achieving more and creating more music down the line. However, I still think there's a very important episode to go over. And that episode is titled Chasing Down a Gene. In this episode, Gene enters an online songwriters contest where he needs to submit an original piece. He has a dream where he created the perfect song, but completely forgets it when he wakes up. Instead of using an older song or doing the work to create a new one, he goes on a journey to learn how to lucid dream so that he can recreate his past dream and extract the song. This required him to research and practice the lucid dreaming process extensively. After many failed attempts to control his dream, Gene finally recreates it, and while in the dream, the song sounds better, I guess. It has more instrumentation, the keyboard sounds more like a piano, and overall it has a cleaner, better produced quality to it. However, once Gene performs the song for his family, he's very aware that it sounds awful. The family lets him down gently, but ultimately let him know that the song is terrible. The contest deadline is at midnight, and Gene spent the last couple days working on dreaming instead of creating. That's when Bob drops this absolute gem of a quote.
In my experience, to make something great, you have to work at it.
So simple, yet so often overlooked. So Gene goes to his room to sulk. Eventually, he gets tired of sulking and realizes that he has to start working if he wants to get anywhere with his music. So for the next few hours, Gene becomes focused on his goal more than we've ever seen. We see him go through phases of determination, struggles, and breakthroughs while working the night away to ultimately craft this.
I chased after a dream. It all seemed so simple, but get close to a star and you can't see it twinkle. I chased the dream like they say you're supposed to, but chase the thing in the dream that your heart wants to show you.
So finally, thanks to the episode Running Down a Gene, we now arrive here on the slope of enlightenment, at the crest just before reaching the plateau. From my perspective, this is the best, most complete song that he's created entirely on his own. Its rhythm is more intricate, the melody is stronger, there is a key change, something that Gene admitted to not even knowing how to do, and the lyrics are his most serious and emotional yet. The title of this episode is a reference to the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers song, Running Down a Dream. It's about the continuous journey of going after a dream or goal through whatever obstacles or paths it may lead you towards. The song speaks of actions actively happening instead of passively, to convey the idea that a dream will not just come to you, you have to pursue it. I think it's no coincidence that the concept of Gene's song is almost identical to Running Down a Dream. The episode serves as an elevation in Gene's work ethic, which would allow Gene to develop much more as a musician. The song serves as a proof of concept for him. It's shown him that what he's doing over time, the work, the learning, has come together and allowed him to produce this song. It's something he can look back at for assurance when practice is stressful or a concept is proving hard to learn. A reminder to continue pushing through, and on the other side is a beautiful work of art. Shout out to Chris Harper on Patreon. Your support has done so much for me in the last couple months. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and keeps you up to date on my videos. Till next time, see ya.